Yes, this is the Higher Power Radio Show. Before we get started, let's take care of a little housekeeping.
Learn the most empowering hiring techniques. Land the most desirable talent. Launch your company towards massive success. This is the Higher Power Radio Show with your host, Rick Girard.
All right, so a founder called me after a growth spurt and was supposed to feel like a win. Revenue was up, headcount doubled fast, but inside the business, people were quitting, managers were snapping, and the culture started sliding into this quiet resentment. The founder said, I don't get it. I'm paying them. What else do they want? Huge red flag, guys. So when people feel respected, seen, or safe to speak up, they don't just disengage. They start protecting themselves when they don't feel good within the company. And that's when your best people stop rowing the boat in the right direction and your company starts bleeding momentum. Today's conversation is about this fix, how to scale fast without creating career wounds, career culture rot, and churn that you cannot afford. I'm Rick Girard, and welcome to the Higher Power Radio Show. We help entrepreneurs and executives win the strongest people. We do so by sharing insights from top-performing rebel entrepreneurs, game changers, and industry leaders like our guest today, Mr. Nick Ayala. Nick is a senior managing partner at Blue Harbor Capital. Now, Nick is a multi-time operator and growth builder who scaled businesses from essentially 2 people to roughly 70 employees in about a year. Then helped scale an insurance organization to about 7,000 agents and nearly $100 million in sales within 5. He's known for building high output teams by putting culture first, moving fast on misalignment, and treating people like partners instead of payroll, which is what makes Nick the perfect expert for today's topic. Nick, welcome to the Higher Power Radio Show today.
Hey, Rick, thank you, man. It's the Rick and Nick show. I like it. I appreciate you having me on.
It makes things much easier when our names are right. I can't possibly mess up your name.
Right, exactly.
Awesome. So let's start with your story. You've been an operator quite a few times. You had this explosive growth, but it probably created some pressure. What I've seen is that a lot of times that explosive growth is sometimes overwhelming. Tell me about the root issues that you encountered during that time frame.
Yeah, I mean, look, when you grow fast at all, there's always growing pains no matter what. I think we all want to grow fast, but if your structure isn't proper in the business or with employees like we're talking about more today, things can unravel quick and you can see gaps and holes much faster. For us, our structure was very well in multiple companies that I've had that have grown very quickly. The problem became mid-management. The problem became employees not being heard, felt like they were valued in a proper way, especially in one of my first companies. As I started to understand this and learn what was happening, I've also seen it obviously with other partners I've had or businesses that I've been close to, but any kind of growth that's rapid. So for instance, one of my companies we took from doing, we went from basically myself as one employee to about 70 employees in a little under 14, 15 months, something like that. And so that was massive explosion in growth, revenue, income, but also an employee base. And so I saw a lot of things we did wrong there. I had another company that went from 0 to doing $35 million in sales in 2 years. A lot of employees there, as well as contractors that we were working with. So, if you don't have your systems and processes and understanding how employees think and how they can actually help you properly and how they feel, it can cause a lot of friction.
That 2 to 20 storyline, this is what always makes me super curious. Did you ever look into I know you're in such a frenzy to hire, but did you ever look at what your attrition rate was during that time frame? I mean, a lot of times it's this frenzy of let's just give people a shot. Let's just get butts in seats. Let's hope that they work, right? You're kind of crossing your fingers that happens.
Yeah.
What did you see or encounter?
Yeah, I saw it a lot. So, the famous phrase is what hot, slow, and fire fast. I can tell you that I didn't do that at first. That was a big mistake. I hired fast and fired slow. It was the exact opposite, especially because for me, and I think for a lot of business owners, it's really uncomfortable to have the firing conversation. And you're dealing with people who are counting on you and you don't want to let them down and they're getting a paycheck, but they're hurting your business and you're just hoping it turns around, and it never does. It never actually really turns around, or very few times will it ever. And so you're in this phase where you're hanging on, hoping, and you finally get to the point where either you've had enough or the employees had enough and they're actually damaging your business because they're not happy. They're over there hurting your culture. They're saying things they shouldn't say. They're telling people they're going to quit, because an employee doesn't quit when they actually quit. They quit days, weeks, and months before they actually make the decision to leave.
That's a
Um,
great point.
Yep. And so they're already in there doing things that are hurting your organization without even you realizing it. So that whole slow fire fasting is so powerful, but it's hard, especially as a small business owner, because you feel a sense of responsibility and you just avoid having that hard conversation of you have to get out of here.
Did you feel like it was the responsibility to that person, or was it just not wanting to have to refill the position and actually redo that work that you already did?
I think it was a combination of both and a
Yeah.
combination of fear at the same time.
Yeah.
Fear of having the conversation. It's a crappy conversation that you have to have. Number one. Yes, it sucks to have to go through the whole hiring process again and find somebody else again. And it's a headache, and it's also very expensive to hire and onboard and everything. So I think it's a combination of everything you just said, plus the fear.
I feel like it's more expensive to mishire than it is to hire, right?
No doubt.
And one of the things that I've learned is that diligence, putting in more diligence in the beginning is a much better thing than let's just hope they work.
So I've
And
learned to strategically, when I'm hiring, ask people better questions about themselves, obviously being careful of laws in that initial interview or those interviews, and looking for body language, because people can fake interviews. The way I hire now, Rick, is I like to do video first. So if you're applying for a job, I want you to record a video. It's my first filter, because 90% of people aren't going to record a video. We basically give them steps of, hey, record this about yourself, answer these questions, but move about the company, whatever. 90% of people won't even do it. So I just eliminated 90%. Now I'm working with 10%. So now I get to see the person. And so when I see the person, now I can interview, or let's move to the next step with this person. Now they're going to fake that interview, because we all fake interviews. That's super normal, right? We always look good on the first interview. And then I always like to have one or two follow-up interviews. I want to see their posture, what they're talking about, and how they're reacting to questions. And I'm going to put them on the spot. And I don't care what they're saying. I'm watching how they react, because that's the biggest thing.
all right, okay. I'm going to dig into this a little bit deeper, but let me. So you're listening to the Higher Power Radio Show. For our podcast listeners, we're going to take a quick educational moment from our sponsors.
This is William Tincup, and I'd like to talk to you a little bit about Indeed FutureWorks. Ryan and I attended the conference last year, and we created a limited series for Indeed where we talked to their customers. Great stories around TA and how they use Indeed to the max. So check it out. It's just Indeed FutureWorks 2024. You can search for it wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks.
In case you're just joining us, I'm digging in deeper with Nick Ayala. He's the Senior Managing Director of Blue Harbor Capital. And actually, I'm loving that we're digging into this, because we're starting to get into the problem. So we're talking about really how to avoid these hire fast, fire slow scenarios, because I think we've all done them. And, for me personally, I believe that I just didn't want to fill the role when I kept somebody too long. I didn't want to go through that whole, I got to find somebody else. And maybe it's a bit of laziness. I don't know. But this is good, because we're actually starting to dig into what you do from a interview standpoint. Let's break this down. So you've got a process that you use now, which is you're doing video interview and recording. So talk to me a little bit about that, and let's unpack that a little bit.
Yeah. So if someone applies to a job, we put something out there and they apply, the first thing they're going to get is a communication from us of some sort, asking them to film a video answering X amount of questions that we have already internally that we're going to send them. A little bit about themselves, obviously, about our company and what they've seen. There's about 15 questions. And why we do that is because we got tired of just interviewing so many people at one point that was like, we have to create a filter. And so that filter was, there's nothing illegal about saying, hey, do the interview and let us watch you. Now, when I watch you, obviously I'm an employer and a person, I'm going to judge you. That's what we're doing. We're judging to see if you're a good fit for the company. But if 100 people apply to a job, only 10 of them are going to actually record the video.
Let me ask you a question, because this is I don't know if you've thought about this. Which people do you think are actually doing it? And who are you screening out?
So generally speaking, it's the people that are serious, not just the people that are either trying to get a job or don't really care about it. They just want a paycheck. What we're actually getting are people that are serious about their career, serious about their life, because they're taking the time to do something that nobody wants to do. In a job and in life, we always have to do things we don't want to do. That's called life. That's called work. So now we're getting the people that are like, I'm willing to get uncomfortable because no one likes to be on camera and do something I don't want to do to possibly get what I'm looking for. So we're now getting a much higher rate of the right people that we're looking for.
Okay, I might challenge you on that. And I'll tell you why. As a headhunter, I've had companies that have had these video things. What I've learned is that high performers duck out of it, especially if they're already in a job. And the reason why they do is because they don't know anything about your company. They might have caught the interest. Like there's might have been something there that they were like, oh, this is really cool. I might want to look into this. But passive candidates don't ever jump through those video filter hoops. So I have an argument, and I could be wrong, right? Just from what I've learned as a headhunter, whenever I've actually said, okay, here's their hiring process. You need to do a video recording with these, some of them are like 3 or 4 video questions and they just piece out. And the other thing is that I've learned that people who are like engineers or accountants or like kind of like a little bit more on the introverted side of things, they don't do well with those. And so they get super frustrated. And I feel like, and you could prove me wrong, but I feel like you're probably getting the best of the mediocre that are making it through.
So
Possibly.
yeah, no, I understand what you're saying, but there's 2 sides to it. So if I'm going to a very, very high level position, we're doing a different process. Like we're not, so because we're only probably talking to 4 or 5 people. When we're going to a mid-level position, lower level position, we are doing this and we are finding the right people because if it's an accountant or if it's something like that, I want them to be uncomfortable. Their job is on the screen, but I am going to, in my position or in my team's position, make them uncomfortable many times throughout the day or throughout their work week, because that's going to be the job. So my bigger thing is not judging them on how they're responding, but actually if they're doing it. Because if they're not doing it, that means when I need them to do something that's going to make them uncomfortable, they're going to shy away from it. And that means I'm going to have to either push them harder or they're just not going to do it. And that's a problem for me.
Yeah.
So that's how I look at it.
No, I get it. Like I said, I could be super wrong here, right? But what I've experienced
good
is
point,
that
though.
I have had pushback from it, especially like I built a lot of engineering organizations or software companies. I've had more duckouts of people just saying, no, I'm not interested now, and I know they were really, really good people. So I always wonder, like, what are we really screening out? Are we screening out the top and the bottom 10%? Or like, and we're just getting kind of that 80% in between?
I'm not mad at getting the 80% if that's what we get. Here's what someone
that's
told me a
good.
long time ago. No one's ever going to care about your business the way you do. No matter who you hire, they're never going to care about the business the way you do. They're not going to work as hard as you. They're not going to care as much. So what I've learned and what I was told by someone a long time ago in business when I was having this problem, especially delegating, is if you can get 70% of how much you care and how hard you work from an employee, you will win and you can delegate, you can grow a company. And so I think what happens is most people are looking for people that are going to care as much as they do, work as hard as they are, and they never find that person because
That's just being delusional. I'm with you 100%. Like, that's a great point. 70% of people who are getting, I hear you on this. So let's talk about kind of culture, right? As you were going through this whole thing, how did you actually kind of head off and create this culture that really drove growth for your business?
I like to see everyone win. I'm the kind of person that I know that if everyone's winning, I will win as well. My family will win. The business will win.
Yeah.
I have watched companies and big companies. If you just go to stores like grocery stores or everywhere else, you just look around and you watch employees, they're not happy. And then watch how they treat customers, not good. Right.
Yeah.
So unless it's just a company that is just necessary, most companies fall apart because the first line of defense is your employees. They're the ones that are taking care of customers. So I've always taken the adage of the customers are not number one. The customers are not most important. The employees are most important. The customers comes after that. Because if the employees feel like they're valued, employees come to work happy and they feel good about their life and their job and where they are, and they feel like they're making a difference in the company, they're going to pass that along to the customers, which in turn will create more customers or customer satisfaction or more revenue. So for me, it always starts with the employees and it gets to the customers.
And I think one of the things that you you said when we first talked, and this kind of resonated with me, is that you always try to express gratitude and respect toward everyone
Yeah.
because that filters down.
Look, there's statistics out there, and it's just known that most people will stay in a job even though they can go get paid a little bit more somewhere else because they're happy in their job. They feel like they're making a difference. They feel like they're valued. And so people will stay at a job because they're valued. And it can be the exact opposite, which I have seen multiple times. I had a partner that it happened with, like where you're undervalued, you're not valued at all. And eventually, very quickly, they become very upset about the company. They don't want to be around the company, and they start hurting the company in many ways out of resentment. So treating people properly, learning about them, learning about their families once they're in your organization, learning about their interests, what they like, treating them just like a human being is, I think, where so many of us as business owners go wrong because we're so wrapped up in the day to day. We're so wrapped up in how do we drive more revenue? How do we get more customers? How do we grow the business? That we forget the people that are helping us are human beings. They're not AI agents that just work, they're real people.
Yeah.
And so it's a hard thing to do. And you see certain companies that have great culture. And it's because those employees, those people in the company feel valued. They feel like what they do actually makes a difference. And that's huge.
You so hit the nail on the head there. Like as a recruiter, if a company had a strong culture, there's no way I could pry good people out of the company. And it always comes from the CEO down, right? But if they didn't feel like they had a voice or they were listened to, or like they even had, the big thing for me was whether or not they had room to grow in their career. If they didn't know that they had a path ahead of them, it was easy for me to recruit them and put them into another company that could provide them a path, because we lean too much on the money. The story that I told in the very beginning, well, I'm paying them really well, they should be super happy. No, that's just a small component of what keeps somebody there.
Absolutely.
You talked about kind of human due diligence. Let's talk about the conversation rhythm that you run. You have a process that you run through with your employees to make them feel valued.
So what we do, once they're in, and especially once they're in the company, I have an open door policy. Like I'm not this guy that closes his door and leave me alone. Like I want to be on the front lines. I want to know what's happening so I can help support the people that are making the difference. Right. So I like to bring people in on a regular basis, especially if they're new. I like to ask them about themselves, what their interests are, what they do for fun, about their family. Do they have kids? What do their kids do? What's their spouse do? If they have a spouse, what are they into? I just want to generally learn about them because it does a lot of things, right? It shows that I'm a human being and not just a figure. It shows that I actually care, which is a big deal. I'm also gathering a boatload of information. I'm gathering information that I can use strategically to help me or help my other managers or whoever else get what we need out of that individual, or put that person in the right seat, in the right position. Because so many times we hire and other people hire, and we hire someone wonderful, but we put them in the wrong position for them. And so they don't shine. They don't feel valued, and then they end up leaving. But they were actually probably a really good hire. So sitting them down and actually spending some quality time. When I say quality time, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. So it doesn't have to be an hour. That's not what we're asking. Spending some quality time, making sure that people have coffee in the morning. That's a big one. Buying them lunch once a month, once a week. That's a huge one. That's one of the ones that I've noticed the most. When you buy lunch for your staff, they are over the moon. One of my
People
companies
love food.
love it. One of my companies we do it every Friday. I have another company that's a tax firm. During tax season, we do it 3 times a week because they're just slammed. So like there's many ways we do it, but it just shows this appreciation. And even though it's a small gesture and it's not a big ask monetarily, it shows a lot to them. It shows that they're valued.
What I kind of get from you too is that you are genuinely interested in that. Truthfully, there's a lot of CEOs that just don't give a shit. And that's kind of sad. And then they kind of scratch their head and come up with I always laugh when I hear you can't get young people to stay these days. This generation, they don't, you know what I mean? I'm like, there's plenty of them that are staying in places for a very, very long time. Maybe it's you.
I used to be that guy.
Yeah, I did
for
too.
a short period of time. Yeah, I had to learn. I had to realize that, dude, you got to start being interested in people. My wife is the one that actually kind of opened my eyes to that at one point when she was working for one of our companies. And when I started doing that, I noticed a really big difference, not only in myself, but in the people as well.
You mentioned in our conversation too, you like to ask follow-up questions like a 10-year-old.
Yes, I like to dig in.
Yeah.
So when we're talking and when they're telling me about themselves and I'm asking them questions, I like to continue asking questions over and over, like a 10-year-old. Like a 10-year-old would say, "Well, why is the sky blue?" And you'll start saying, and then I'll go, "Well, why is that? And why is that?" And eventually you're like, "I don't even know how to answer this. I don't know the answer," but they keep asking, right? I like doing that for multiple reasons. Again, I want to see how people react so I know where I can put them in what positions. Some people get squirmy. Some people start fidgeting with their pen or their seat or whatever. Some people don't. Some people react very well. Some people seem like it's an interrogation and they get defensive. I want to know that. I want to know all of it. So it gives me information, but it also makes them feel good because people love to talk about themselves. We all do. That's human nature. So while I'm doing that and I'm listening, they feel good because they feel like they're being heard. And you don't know at home, they might not be heard at all. And now here's this person in front of you that's listening and they want to talk. It accomplishes so many things.
I found that in my recruiting career, what made me successful was the fact that all I did was get people talking and listen. Ask them what's happening in their current role that has them open to hearing about something potentially strong.
Yeah.
Open that door because nobody else listens to it. You're right. Nobody else listens to them.
Yeah.
All right. So you've got kind of like, I broke this down in a process, right? So you kind of had this step one, treat people like partners, not payroll. Two, run like human due diligence conversation rhythm. And then the third part that we talked about was putting the right people in the right seat and giving them autonomy. Let's talk a little bit about that.
So I kind of touched on that before, and that goes through the process that I like to go through when actually sitting with somebody after we hire them, and even before, but really once afterwards, is asking them the right questions to understand what their needs are, what their expectations are, what they can do for the company, what they like to do outside of work, so that I can get an understanding of, hey, we might have this individual in a very admin type role, but there's so much more to this individual right now that we can say, hey, no, we need you here for the moment, but I'm thinking that I could use you here, or we're going to put you there right away in a little higher role that's going to help the company more. You don't know that if you don't ask questions of people. If you're just hiring for a role, you never know that. If you hire like a Fortune 500 company with 3,000 employees, you won't know those things.
No, never.
Never. So,
Yeah.
as small business owners, we need to not hire that way. We need to hire differently because if you do that, what you find is you'll fill roles that you didn't even know you needed to fill because people have a lot to offer you if you treat them right and you start asking them the right questions to unlock what it is they can give your company. You'll start filling roles you didn't even know you could fill. And then they'll take on 2 or 3 roles that you would have to pay another person for out of the goodness of their heart because they feel happy and valued that they're able to do it.
That's a really good point. I always say don't hire for roles, hire people and
Yeah.
like let them find the roles that they're going to excel in. I know it's a weird way of looking at it, but you definitely have work that needs to get done. And you bring up such a good point. When people see something that maybe you don't see,
Yeah.
let them do it. Nothing worse than, you mentioned like large enterprise organizations or corporate, right? You're hired for a role. You're going to do this specific little thing.
Right.
And in order for you to move up, somebody above you's got to die
Exactly.
or retire. Like, oh,
Right.
what a
Right.
terrible feeling that is.
Yeah, horrible. I mean,
Yeah.
I've hired people that I did not have a role for,
Yeah.
but I just saw something great and I was like, I need to have this person. I don't know what to do with them yet, but I'll figure it out quick. And I have done that multiple times because if you find the right person, they're hard to find. You don't want to let them go.
Great people are flexible. Like they can come in, start one place, and then they find things that you don't even
Yeah.
know and expand on them and make things better. And I'm with you. I feel like 8 players are like that, especially people that are builders in their DNA. They
Yeah.
tend to really, let me in for this and then just let me get going.
Yeah.
Well, shoot, we're getting pretty close on time here. Nick, what would be 2 or 3 key takeaways you can give the audience that can plug into their business today?
Yeah. I mean, just keeping on this topic, if we're going to stay on this
Yeah.
topic, Rick, is when you're hiring, like you said, look to find the right people, not the right position, but value them. If you find a way to give them value, they'll stay with you forever. They'll run through walls for you. And that's what you want. And it's not because you're paying them more money. It's because you're treating them well. They feel valued. They'll talk about your company outside of work. They'll bring you business outside of work on off work hours because they're excited to work for you. They're
Yeah.
excited to be around you. And like that is so valuable to a company, especially a small business. When you do that, it changes everything, because what it'll also will breed is the culture of when you bring on the next person, the same thing happens. You bring on the next person, before you know it, you have a culture of a bunch of people that'll kill for your company, that'll do anything for you, anything you need. Is going to respect you because you respect them, and you have a badass business because of it.
You don't get there by hiring fast and firing slow.
I did that. You don't do that. Yeah, exactly. Learned my lesson early on.
Nick, thanks so much for your time investment today, and I want to welcome you to the Higher Power Radio community. Now, what would be the best way in which members of our audience can find you, find your company, all that stuff?
Yeah, thanks. LinkedIn and Instagram are probably my two most active. I have a lot of followers on Instagram, put a lot of stuff out there, especially about capital and money, and then LinkedIn as well. So Nick J. Ayala, Ayala.
Yeah, what's really weird is that I reached out to Nick, we got connected, we started talking, and then all of a sudden I'm doing Duolingo and I see Nick show up in the ads. I'm like, he's all over the place. So definitely connect up with him, man. He's a great guy to know. All right, I want to thank you for tuning this week's episode of Higher Power Radio. A quick thanks to our team, Brian Colburn, Andrea Ballin, and Ayla Girard. If you're listening to the podcast, please subscribe, review, and share. After all, this show's for you. We want to continue to bring you very valuable content week after week. You can check us out further at Hire, H-I-R-E, Power, P-O-W-E-R, Radio, R-A-D-I-O.com, or you can reach out to me at rick@intertrue, intertru.ai. I'm your host, Rick Girard, and you have been listening to the Higher Power Radio Show. Aloha.
Thank you for listening to Higher Power Radio. Catch our LinkedIn Live show every Tuesday at noon, or download the podcast on iHeartRadio, iTunes, YouTube, or your favorite podcast platform. We appreciate you joining us on Higher Power Radio with your guide to hiring success, Rick Girard.